6.
Quarter to 6. Went into the dressing room to weigh myself, and that's when I collapsed.
And I did hear the first crash and thought, that's typical. You know, he did something ridiculous.
Until the second noise where I went all the way down.
But then, the second crash, I knew something was wrong, and I went running in there.
My right side was completely down, and I couldn't speak.
And I'm yelling at him, what's wrong? Talk to him. He wouldn't and couldn't talk to me. That's the scary part right there, because he couldn't. And as the seconds went by, his face got twisted. And that, you know, right away, you have to know a stroke.
She very astutely noticed that when she went to check on him that he wasn't speaking, and called 911 right away.
And EMT was there within 5 minutes.
The paramedics quickly evaluated him and realized that he was likely having a stroke. They called the emergency department and we alerted what we call a stroke alert. So when he got there, we were all waiting for him in the room.
Still couldn't talk. Still couldn't see anything from my right side at all. I could hear them, but I couldn't respond.
When Mr. Petruzzi came in, we noticed he couldn't speak, and he couldn't move the right side of his body, not the right side of his face, or his arm, or his leg. When someone's having a stroke, it can either be from bleeding in the brain or from lack of blood flow to the brain. The more common reason for someone to have a stroke is lack of blood flow to the brain. When Mr. Petruzzi came in, we immediately got a CT scan, as we do for all patients with stroke, to first make sure there was no bleeding. Once we made sure there was no bleeding, then we administered him a medicine called TPA, which is a clot bursting medicine.
I didn't know it was called TPA. I knew there was something that if you're there within a certain time, and right now I'm not sure if it's 2 hours or not, what it is, but even that was scary because they explained in detail that if it works, it's going to work well, and if it doesn't work, it could cause a bleed that would not be pleasant.
It causes bleeding if someone has waited a longer period of time. That's why it's so important to get in right away, because if we administer TPA early, we have a much lower risk of causing bleeding in the brain.
And I looked over at him and thought, there's no choice. There is no choice because he can't live his life the way he was, so yeah, go ahead and do it.
Just about half an hour later, he was able to speak, and he was able to move his right arm some and his right leg. So an hour later, he can carry on a conversation and he can move both of his arms.
Within 1 hour, somebody said, did I see his arm move? And sure enough, he started moving. And what was the first thing you said?
Well, when I could move around, I could see, and I could start seeing some on the right. My right eye was starting to focus. I asked him for a salami sandwich.
Why, I do not know. By that time, 7:30 in the morning, well, he would need a salami sandwich, but that's what he wanted.
If Mr. Petruzzi hadn't come in quite so urgently, it's very possible that he may still not be able to move his right arm or may not be able to walk without assistance. It's difficult to tell in retrospect, but it's really our ability to help someone with a stroke nowadays is really dependent on how quickly we can see them after they have that stroke.
He was in the hospital 45 minutes or 40 minutes after his stroke, which I'm positive saved his life. But I never expected a result like we got. Didn't ever expect that. I thought we were going to have the rest of our few years not very pleasant.
Speaking to the Petruzzis about an hour after the stroke happened and we were able to give the TPA, they were just overjoyed in how quickly and essentially nearly completely recovered he was within an hour of arriving.
I don't know how much it would be saying it's a miracle, man, but it felt like a miracle.
They told us that my son and myself in the emergency room that we saved his life. So, there you go.